Hey everyone. One of the cool things in Savage Worlds is that there are settings with setting rules, and then the core book has setting rules, and that lets you tailor your game experience to the ways you want to play the game. You don't have to play it the same way. You can tweak it, you can add different setting rules. And so, what I want to talk today is about setting rules, what I think about them, which ones I use, and as a bonus, I'm going to throw in some setting rules from third party settings and Pig that I think are kind of interesting and you should know about. Hey everyone, it's Carl with Tabletop Tango. Please look at the bubbles, do the stuff. We'd love your support. We'd love you to subscribe, like, send us an email, whatever. It'd be cool. And you also check out our podcast, Mastering the RPG, which is available everywhere. So what do I want to talk about? Well, I want to talk about setting rules. And so in Savage Worlds, like I said, has lots of different setting rules that you can take advantage of to craft your game in the way you want. Or you can have setting rules come from settings, third-party settings, or Pinnacle's own settings that help you also have a certain flavor to the game. Again, based on the setting, or you can just use them in your own game. So let's go through them. Why not? So first is Born a Hero. Player characters ignore rank requirements for edges during character creation. That's pretty cool. I like this setting rule if you're trying to do something that has a little more power curve to it, and you don't necessarily want to just start people off at seasoned, which is another way of doing it. It's a little difficult because players are going to say, well, does that mean I can get a legendary? Well, the reality is you still have all the requirements you have to meet. So if it requires a smartest D8 or requires a fighting of D8 or whatever it is, you still need to have those prerequisites before you can pick it. So what that really means is it kind of limits you more or less to kind of seasoned. But there's a lot of cool seasoned ones where if you want to invest early on, you can go all in. Like, for example, level-headed. I love level-headed. It's a great edge. If you want that right away, you need to go all in because you need a smarts of a D8. So you're going to be like really spending your points, and you're going to have a couple of attributes that are just not that good. But the reality is those can be upticked once per rank. And so you might be able to catch up a little bit on those if that's really what you want initially. Some folks have it a little easier. I play shooters. I love shooters. And if you look at, for shooters, you can take advantage of rapid fire or rock and roll. And all they require is a D6 in shooting to be able to take those at the season. So yeah, why not? And I'm sure there's other combat edges that are very similar that you can take advantage of. A lot of the higher level ones require lower level ones. So you might have a hard time really going and grabbing a big one like I mentioned, or something that's at the veteran level. So think seasoned, think those attributes, think very carefully about how you're going to build up after that. So I'm going to get level-headed. What do I need to do to get my smarts back up to a D6 because I took that as a D4 plus something else. So anyway, conviction, love it, love it, love it. Almost always use it. The whole point of conviction is you get a token that's like a Benny, but it's not, and you get to roll a D6 that can explode when you play this coin or you play this token. And it's for any trait rolls, damage rolls. It's great. It's awarded when you have a big triumph or a big defeat. I tend to give them out more when players overcome a big adventure challenge, because I think that's a good time to get a conviction, because usually they're ending up spending conviction to try to keep moving the story forward. But conviction is awesome. I love conviction. I think everybody should use it. It's nice to have that D6 in your pocket that explodes just for fun. Creative combat is the next one. On a raise of a test, you can roll on a special table that has grants special effects or additional effects. It's interesting. I don't use it because, again, it's another roll, and I like to keep things fast and furious. But there's nothing really wrong with it. It's interesting if you have a lot of players who are kind of test monsters and their whole goal is to do tests. Maybe you do that to kind of throw them a bone and say, hey, there's more you can do with tests. Or you want players to use tests more and you want to kind of make that interesting. It might be a good one for that then. but I don't use it a lot because of the extra roll. Dumb luck, characters can spend a Benny on a critical failure, and it gives them another chance of success, but it's usually in an unusual way, right? So you still kind of fail, but you fail forward in a sense. Never use this one. I like the fact that a critical failure causes the story to go in a completely different direction, and sometimes bad luck just happens, and so I don't use it. If you want your players, like for example, if you want your players to have that ability because of the way your setting is set up, sure. Like for example, I'll talk a little bit about dynamic backlash, which is a critical failure for a power user, causes some bad things. Maybe you want to also combine that with dumb luck so that they could still have their things failed, but it fails in a way that helps them out so it's not a complete loss. But speaking of that, dynamic backlash. A critical failure on an arcane skill roll forces the player to roll on a special table with various chaotic results. So that's kind of cool. I don't use it at all. I feel like the power system in Savage Worlds, as Pinnacles put it together, is pretty robust as is. I think it's well balanced generally. So I don't think I necessarily need this to be part of my setting. I get it if you have something like, let's say you have wild powers and people are playing gifted and their powers are wild and unpredictable. Maybe it's a setting rule you might take advantage of. I don't use it personally. Fanatics, this is where enemy thugs or extras jump in front of the bad guy and take the damage that he would ever get. Great setting rule if you use it in moderation. Great setting rule for important situations where you don't want your big bad guy to get one-shotted. Hey, he should be hiding behind cover. He should be ordering minions around by not exposing himself. But let's say they do. It's an interesting setting if you want setting rule if you want to kind of keep the villains not so exposed and give them chances to escape. Caveat is, if your players, let's look at a player with a power. If your players are investing everything they got into this massive shot to hopefully, bring the bad guy to his knees a little bit, let someone else take advantage of it. So for example, power user, they've amped up with extra damage or using mega modifiers. They're doing everything that they can. That is not the time to have a minion jump in front and take that hit. It's just a complete letdown to the player. So use it sparingly. Again, I don't really use it. I don't know, because I keep my bad guys kind of playing smart and protecting themselves so that the players can't do that one shot. Fast healing, no reason not to use it in a lot of settings, especially if your players get bumps and bruises and fatigued a lot. And then it's like, oh, I got to wait 24 hours. Oh, my God. Well, maybe you use that rule to allow for that healing every 5 days and recover fatigue every 4 hours instead of every day. Gritty damage. The next one, this is when a wild card takes a wound. They roll on an injury table and apply the results, and that's temporary until the wounds are healed. Might be great for post-apocalypse, kind of a gritty setting where there's danger around every corner, and you really want the players to feel that, like maybe a zombie apocalypse. Very good. I don't really use it that much. I used it once in a campaign, and what I found is after a couple of sessions, I just sort of stopped, and it's because, again, it's an extra roll, because it was impacting the players and the players' ability to keep moving and moving the story along. And now they had to apply wounds, and it was kind of cool for a little bit, but it just sort of got in the way. And because of that, I let it fall by the wayside, and we didn't use it, even though we started using it. What do you think, though? Put a comment down on what you think of all these setting rules that I'm going through and what you think of them. Hard choices, never going to use this. This one is the GM doesn't get bennies. He only gets bennies when the heroes spend bennies. When the characters spend their bennies, I get bennies to spend. I don't like it because what it does is it changes the economy. It makes the players not want to spend bennies because they're afraid I'll get the bennies when they spend them. I want them spending bennies. I want them to feel like those heroes throwing bennies, that's fun. As you know, I'm bad at giving bennies out in the first place, and I forget to give them out. Last thing I want the players to do is not spend them. I still want them to spend them. I still want to feel like I should be giving them out. So I don't really use hard choices at all. Heroes Never Die, great one. So this one is where heroes and villains rarely actually, name villains as they say, rarely actually, wildcard villains, rarely actually die but return in some way after being defeated. Great for superhero, great for where you want to have a villain that is like their nemesis, comes back again and again in different forms. They think he's down, they think they've defeated him, but he keeps coming back and causing mayhem. Really good for that kind of play style, as long as the players understand it and that they know these folks are going to get away. Batman is going to bring the Joker to Gotham, and he's going to escape from Gotham. Batman's not going to strangle Joker and kill him right there so that he can't escape. Players have to buy into it. And then they talk about the villain in the description. Maybe the villain gets captured and the players turn him over, like I mentioned, Batman does. But I also think it's cool to just let the villain find a way to escape. That last minute, he's just about to get incapacitated, and oh yeah, there is a escape chute, or the helicopter shows up to pick him up. Whatever. I like that concept better. I really haven't never used Heroes Never Die because I tend to use wound caps, which is another one which helps with the players aren't quickly incapacitated and taken out and bleed out. It helps with that. High Adventure, spend a Benny, get a combat edge, a one-time combat edge. Why not? That sounds kind of cool if you're playing an Indiana Jones kind of game, and he doesn't know how to pilot a plane, but this is a combat edge, but he's not used to fighting this way, but suddenly he gets that one edge he needs to make the fight go his way. That's nothing wrong with that. That's kind of cool. There's also a thing in the Fantasy Companion, and it may be in other companions. I'm not sure when it's introduced, but probably was in Pathfinder. But anyway, there's martial flexibility, which is an edge that kind of is more interesting, but has the same kind of effect where you can get a combat edge. More skill points. Next one. Why not? You play in a modern game, yeah, give them more skill points. The alternative is you can give them everybody a standard skill. If you're in a modern day, why not just give them a D4 in electronics? Because everybody knows how to use their cell phone. Everybody knows how to use their microwave. Normal, maybe you give them a D4 in driving because everybody knows how to drive. And so then they don't have to have extra skill points just so they can buy the basic skills that they should have. Just give it to them. But nothing wrong with more skill points. Why not? Especially if you want the players to be cool. They're going to be more cool. Multiple languages. You got to read a book. I don't know anything about it. I hardly ever use languages. I use some languages in sci-fi campaign I'm doing right now, and at some point, let's just say they found an AI who's good at languages. I'm just not good at it. We just don't think about it. But if it's something that makes a lot of sense, like you're in a game where there's ancient Egypt and lots of different languages from different areas, and you have to be able to understand them, and hilarity will ensue if you don't understand them, sure, why not? But I don't use any languages, so multiple languages, don't know a lot about. No PowerPoints. Again, if this is something where you've got abilities that are more like innate and they don't really use power, they just can use them whenever they want, but there's a penalty. What's no PowerPoints? You don't use PowerPoints, but you subtract half of the listed PowerPoint cost from their skill roll to activate. So basically it means you get a penalty based on how expensive the power is, which is fine. I don't use it really. I tried it. Again, I didn't like it. I feel like the powers in Savage Worlds are already well balanced, and the PowerPoints makes a lot of sense to me. Because you can already cast any power you want at any time as long as you got the PowerPoints. It's not like you need a spell slot to free up or something. So I don't know. I don't use it. I love how other people use it and what they think about it. It's just not something. Maybe again in a campaign where you've got gifted individuals and the power is a little wild, it might be more interesting. Next one, skill specialization. Don't like it. Others have made it work. I've talked about it in other videos with Eric. I don't like skill specialization. I used it. I used it specifically in a cyberpunk world where things made sense. There was different, people didn't have the same skills for things because it's a high-tech world, and fixing a starship is different than fixing a car, which is different than fixing an engineering plant or something, right? All are different. Oh my God. I didn't like it because there was a lot more bookkeeping. The players had to think a lot more about how they were going to do things. In this case, the cyberpunk world had also noticed there was hearing and there was sight. Well, is this something they can see? Is this something they can only hear? Why? I just didn't like it. Maybe I did it wrong, but it just didn't work out. It was more complicated than I wanted it to be. I had originally picked it because I thought it'd be kind of cool, because of this cyberpunk world to do it, but it just didn't work out. The more generic skills, I think, work out better. If you really do have very specific things in the setting you're creating, that might mean there's more skills. You might create another skill to represent that interesting thing that's very specific to your setting. So for example, let's say repairing a starship is a lot different than repairing a Land Rover. And it's important to your setting that that differentiation is made, because the folks on the starship, when they go on the ground, are a little less effective, whatever the reason. You could have a skill that is for repairing vehicles and then those repairing starships. You don't necessarily have to go to skill specialization and have all that other stuff that comes along with it. You can just say, I need a different skill in this world because it's what makes sense to my world. Then we got Unarmored Hero. Unarmored Hero, cool. Why not? You got Indiana Jones running around in a button-down shirt. Why not? Well, because it says wild cards without armor add +2 to soak rolls. Why not? Sounds good. Wound cap. Next one. Use it all the time. I like wound cap because nothing deflates a player character more than seeing the bad guy get a huge explosion and dropping 6 wounds on them, and they're going, oh, so if I get a raise, what I get is just incapacitated. Sure, gritty, you want deadly, and that makes a lot of sense. Great. Me, the games I play, I don't mind the players surviving. My bad guys get the same benefit, right? So you can't as easily one-shot the bad guys. But like I said, they hide. They don't come out in the open. So I like it. I think it's one that I use almost always, unless I very specifically have a reason that something has to be super deadly, like you're in a zombie movie. And so, yeah, if you get hit and attacked and they get a raise, you're going to be dead, and we're going to pull another character in. So those are the setting rules from the core. Cool stuff. But hey, I wanted to throw in a few that I've seen in other settings that I thought were pretty interesting. Deadlands Lost Colony. This isn't so much a setting rules, but it's got mechanics for doing availability of items. They've got rare, they've got uncommon, they've got common. It's a great place to start if you want to do a setting like your Fallout setting. Everybody wants to do a Fallout setting, right? And you want to have rarity as part of what you're doing. It's a great place to start and take advantage of. Secret Files of Section D. This is a third party. You get to be secret agents. It's pretty cool. It has a setting rule called Blaze of Glory, which essentially is when you get incapacitated and you're going to basically die, you can say, I'm going out in a blaze of glory, which gives you a Benny, I think. It gives you a number of actions that you can do before you're ultimately dead. That last wind of attacking the foe, maybe you're the one who takes the grenade and runs up to whatever it is. Before you die, you're doing something fantastic. Probably in other settings, but I first read about it in the section, Secret Files of Section D. I thought it was very cool. Fantasy Companion. Not really a setting rule so much as another thing that you can do called Desperate Attack. This says you're frantically trying to hit, and so you get a bonus to your fighting roll, +2 or +4, but it subtracts that amount of damage from your hit. So this is different than a wild attack, where it affects you as far as people being able to hit you. This is more something more simple. And it can't be combined with a wild attack anyway. So that's cool. Wise Guys. Wise Guys, great setting. You're a mobster. You're a made man in the mafia. It's kind of cool. It's got a great flavor. One of the things it has in it's called betrayal. And this is when a close friend or ally betrays the character. You can't spend the Benny to reroll any opposed defensive actions or even make a soak roll. So this is, you know, you're like in that scene where you've got the bad guy on his knees going, okay, we're going to take, well, in this case, you're playing mobster, so maybe a good guy. It's like you're over, and your buddy who's been with you all along, or one of the NPCs who've been there all along, who's supposed to be loyal, they attack, they do something, they try to take you out. It is so cool. That concept of betrayal, simple concept, simple mechanics, pretty neat. And then getting back to horror, getting back to another peg setting horror companion, there's one called Buckets of Blood. And so this is trying to make that splatter film trope kind of a mechanical reality. And so what happens is when somebody dies in a gruesome fashion, they take a cone template from the victim facing directly away, and anyone in there must make a fear check, a -2, or -4, depending on how close the individual was as far as an ally goes. And then it becomes slippery for hours. But that whole idea that now you get hit with fear again and you roll on the fear table, if you're using the fear table. If you don't, you might want to just define what that effects are to the player. So anyway, that's the setting rules. I use them, what I think about them, some extras that I thought I'd throw in there. Again, hopefully you found this interesting. I'm Carl with Tabletop Tango. Look at the bubbles, do the stuff. Please support, please like, please subscribe, please all that good stuff. Check out our website, and also check out Mastering the RPG podcast, which has more general RPG topics. And I'll catch you next time. Thanks, bye.